Because of the things I need to work on, and the benefits I get from doing this type of an event, and the fact that when I walk outside, I breathe in nothing but smoke because of the fires in Northern California, this is another Zwift crit day for me. Hey cycling community, this is Steve Grusis, the Cycling Greek. For those of you not familiar with my channel, I like doing this event, primarily because I don't like doing intervals on the trainer. I need to do intervals because I need to work on my flatland game. I've been working on my climbing. My climbing has improved. A couple of weeks ago, I did this road race where I got a real good result. But now I have district championships coming up in the road race in my age category. That road race and the district crits a couple weeks after that are on flatland, and my flatland game isn't where it should be. What is the age group I'm in, you ask? Well, I'm 66, so I'm doing 65 to 69s. And with my being usually the oldest guy in this type of race, I like to check out the ages of the others. On a quick perusal of the profiles, it looked like over half of them were below 41, and with most of them being in their 30s. That made a lot of sense because this seemed like a strong group, stronger than I did the other week. Because I'm an old guy and I need all the help I can get, I stick to the anti-sandbagging races. Unless you're exceeding the wattage of the category for 5 minutes and then you're given the cone of shame, the only other consequence is not making it onto Zwift.com if you are registered for Zwift.com. According to Zwift.com, there were a couple riders in this race that should have been racing in the A category because they far exceeded their watts per kilogram for the B category. Ever since I had it forced upgrade into the B category, I seemed to last about half the race with the main group, and I had to work up to that. Therefore, my goal today is to get to the start of the second half with the rest of the group. And that is a big ask because these guys, as I was mentioning earlier, are going quite strong, stronger again than my race this last week. I'm having to put out more power just to stay with them. Now, the tough part of this course for me is the uphill brick section. And every power up that I got, I used in the uphill brick section. Fortunately, the first 2 power-ups that I got were the feather power-ups. These set of rollers were not so bad for me. My biggest problem is being able to maintain my strength during the entire race. Usually around the halfway mark, then I would start to weaken. I would then have to put in a lot of effort to do smaller wattage than what I could do a couple laps earlier. The positives for me coming into this race is that one, I was well rested. I also had a good warm-up and I was feeling strong. Now, it's all relative to keeping in mind that over half these guys were less than 2/3 of my age. Even though I would have liked some more, there were 21 people that were in this race. And a quick scan of the map in the upper right-hand corner indicates that in our second lap that we are all still together. And it was this point I was thinking that this is going pretty tough, so I got to make sure that I'm always in the right position. So what being in the right position means in this case is that I don't want to put in so much power by mistake that I kind of float off the front like I did last week. And I also don't want to be caught where I'm now chasing because I'm off the back by a couple lengths. In short, I don't want to do any big surges in powers if I don't have to, because that'll just suck it out of my legs each time I do it. That certainly contributes to my dying off around halfway through the race. So far, I've been able to do that effectively, but with these guys, I'm still putting out a lot of power just to stay with them. And now that I said that, you'll watch me just floating off the front. I wasn't worried about it too much right now because we are heading into that brick section and I do have that power up. Now I know those behind me are going to come up and then take the lead over from me. I want to be sure that I stay on their wheels toward the front so that I have a little bit of a buffer there. Now I just put on the power up right now. I didn't do that at the beginning because once we leave the brick section and going into that right corner, we still have a little bit of uphill. And it is steeper at the top than it is at the bottom of the brick section. As I reach the top of the bricks, I have about another second of power up. It certainly wouldn't hurt me if next time around in the same situation that I would delay using the power up until I'm halfway through that first section before that first left turn on the brick section. The difference between this race and the last race, again, is that we have a stronger group in this race and that when we get to the top, they did not let up as much as the race last week did. Coming into the rollers, I'm about halfway through the group. And the main thing is that I want to be on a wheel. Again, I want to conserve as much as I can. Now, coming out of the roller section, I put in a lot of power on the uphill, and I dial it back on the downhill. A lot of power on the uphill, dial it back on the downhill. So I do this for about the 3 big hills on these rollers, and sometimes I'll do it on this what I call a minor roller where it's not as steep. That technique at this speed keeps me in the pack, and as we're coming out of the roller section, I am toward the front, and so that gives me a little bit of buffer. I'm all about the buffer. And the buffer is a situation where I'm far enough ahead or toward the front of the pack where if they speed up and I'm having trouble keeping up with their speed, that I'm able to drift back and still be on somebody's wheel. I use that a lot on the road races and crits because I'm usually racing with younger guys. Jumping forward to later in the lap where we're entering the brick section, I just have a draft power-up where I actually start using it at the beginning of the bricks. I use it here at the start rather than in the middle of that section like I was talking about for the feather, just because it is flatter and that I figure I'll get a better benefit from it because it's just the draft. I really don't know if that's accurate or not, but that's what I'm using. So you'll notice that I actually drifted back, had that buffer thing going. I drifted back to like 15th position. And fortunately, I'm still with these guys. And again, this is the 3rd lap of the race. As I mentioned previous, that these guys don't let up when they get to the top. They're still going. So I got gapped, and now I'm having to use extra energy just to get back up to them. And for whatever reason, I have enough confidence that they're not going to get away from me on the rolling section, at least not on this lap. So I'm still off the back. I'm trying to hang on to people that are coming past me. And so now I'm going to apply my technique and see what happens. More power on the uphill, dial back just a bit on the downhill, more power on the uphill, and I'm dialing back. But it looks like I'm not dialing back that much because these guys are going, so that means I got to go with them. That is using a lot of bananas, and so I'm starting to run out of bananas. I so want to make it to the second half of this race, connected with everybody. And now as we're about to cross the start-finish line, we're about to enter the 4th lap. And of course, lap 5 is where the second half of the race starts. And I can remember thinking that I had enough brain cells to be able to think this, is that I had to be careful not to put myself in the mental position that when I get to the second half of the race, that I met my goal and there was nothing else left to accomplish. That I could just stop the race essentially, and then I'd be happy. Well, I didn't want to do that. I want to be able to get to the end of the race with everyone else. I had to make sure that if I couldn't do that, that's because I physically could not do that, not because of some mental games that I was playing that enabled me to just sabotage myself. Jumping forward again to the next brick section, I've kept myself tucked in, and now I had an aero power-up that I started at the beginning of the climb. I love power-ups at the very last lap or so, but in the middle of the race, especially when I want to go over this brick section, I love those feathers. But it enabled me to last the entire time and actually went to toward the front of the group. I don't know if it's because of the power-up necessarily, or the group wasn't going that hard on this particular point. Regardless, I'm about halfway through the group right now. We're spread out, and if you look at my insert in the upper left-hand corner, I'm pushing a lot of air in and out of my lungs. I'm getting pretty tired. I'm not on anybody's wheel, and when people go by me, I can't jump on their wheel. So the buffer effect is maybe kind of there because there's people behind me, but I'm thinking that these guys in front of me are just going to stay away. And we are approaching the end of the first lap. So I've got people with me, and I'm able to pick up my speed a little bit and maybe stay on some wheels, but it's getting pretty tough. I'm floating back, and I just need to stay on the wheel. Please just let me stay on the wheel. Looking at the information on the right, there's a lot of people putting in a lot more watts per kilogram than I am. I'm having trouble doing 4.0, and there's people that are well into the 4s and also pushing into the 5s. I'm hoping right now these guys slow up just so I can connect. The guy that was in back of me is now in front of me, and I'm off his wheel. I'm still trying to get onto somebody's wheel. I'm also taking a look and see the position of everybody. So right now I'm in 15th position, and so now I finally made connection, and I can take a bit of a breath. What I was doing earlier was to see if anybody was behind me that I can connect to in case I didn't connect with these guys again. Earlier I talked about the confidence I had in the roller section. Well, that's now starting to wane. If we enter the rolling section and at a speed that's a lot more comfortable than what it can be for me, then I'll have no problem. If we're putting a lot of power as we're entering into that, and we maintain it through the rollers, well, that will be problematic. But before those rollers, we jump ahead to right before the brick section. And again, I have a draft power-up that I'm using now. Last time I had a draft power-up going up this climb, I ended up at the back. I'm so tired right now, I'm starting to stand to produce more power. And look at that, 14th place. There's people behind me, but pretty much I'm at the back. But fortunately, I'm still connected to a wheel. Okay, this is good news. This is the second half of the race. I made it through the first half. I'm still connected with the group. I know I'm kind of sucking right now, but I'm still there. Now, they're starting to line out and the speed's going up, and so this is the situation I was talking about earlier. We're going to be hitting the roller section, and it looks like at this point that we're going to be stretched out. I hope I'm wrong, but I got to do whatever comes. So now I've lost a wheel, and I'm chasing, and you can see my wattage is starting to go down a little bit because I'm really knackered. It looks like I don't have enough power to apply on this first riser. And when I look ahead, there are people there that are just trying to get away, and then the rest of the group is trying to catch them, and that doesn't put me in a good position. So I put more power on this. They're still in sights. I put a little more power in this section, and I am hoping that they just, especially since those guys that tried to get away have been caught, that they just kind of bunched up and I can get to them when we cross the start finish. However, that is not to be. So I made it to the start of lap 5 with the group, but I'm not making it to the start of lap 6. Okay, small improvements. So the next thing I do is I look at the data on the graphics on the right side to see how close somebody is behind me. Because in these situations, it's great to have somebody just to race with. But that person's about 32 seconds away right now, and I'm in 18th position, so there are 3 people behind me if they're still there. I see that guy behind me is below 3.0, so I'm trying to maintain 3.0 for the rest of the race. Jumping forward to the finish, I see that the person behind me is still about 33 seconds, so I was able to accomplish that. And I tell you, that was even hard, just going 3.0 watts per kilogram. So 18th place on Zwift, 12th place on Zwift Power, and that's because, judging from the data, again, as I was mentioning previously, there were 2 that exceeded the Category B parameters, and there were probably another 4 that just hadn't signed up for Zwift.power. Today is Wednesday, and this is my last hard workout for the week since I have my District Road Race Championships on Saturday. And fortunately, that's going to be with a bunch of old guys like me. I hope you found this video entertaining and got something out of it. Always remember, comment, like, subscribe. The Cycling Greek.